She was thrown out of her father's house by the very woman who called herself family. But years later, when that same woman came begging for food, the girl they once called worthless had built an empire from the very land they tried to steal. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about faith, forgiveness, and the power of starting again when everyone expects you to fall. Hit subscribe, drop a hello in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Because this is Amara's story, and it will remind you that no one can bury the seed that God Himself has planted. The morning sun spilled through the thin curtains of a small house at the edge of town. Amara moved quietly, careful not to wake her stepmother, Mrs. Bello. She'd learned long ago that silence was her safest companion. The woman hated the sound of her footsteps, her voice, even her breathing. Amara set the table with trembling hands, whispering to herself, "Just get through today." "Where's my tea?" A sharp voice snapped from behind her. Amara turned quickly, bowing her head. I was just about to bring it, Ma." Mrs. Bello, a woman with cold eyes and gold earrings that caught the light, gave a dry laugh. "You're always about to. Maybe if you were more like my daughter Tenny, you'd do things right the first time." Tenny walked in wearing a silk robe, yawning dramatically. "Good morning, Mother," she said sweetly, completely ignoring Amara. Mrs. Bello's tone softened immediately. "Good morning, my sunshine. Sit down, I made your favorite breakfast." Amara stood frozen, her stomach twisting at the smell of the food she wasn't allowed to touch. "You're still standing there?" Mrs. Bello hissed. "Go fetch water for the flowers before I find something else for you to do." Amara nodded, stepping out into the yard with the bucket clutched to her chest. The morning breeze brushed her face, but even the wind felt heavy here. She looked toward the road that led out of town and whispered, "One day, I'll leave this place." Later that afternoon, she sat outside scrubbing clothes when an older neighbor, Mama Udo, stopped by. "Ah, Amara, you work too hard," the woman said kindly. "That stepmother of yours has no heart." Amara forced a smile. "It's fine, Ma. I just want peace." Mama Udo sighed. "Peace doesn't come to those who let themselves be treated like dirt. Remember that." Inside, Mrs. Bello was talking to Tenny in hushed tones. "When the lawyer arrives, don't mention that property your father left in Amara's name," she said. Tenny frowned. "But won't the lawyer find out?" "He doesn't have to," Mrs. Bello replied sharply. "As far as anyone's concerned, she's just the house girl." Amara walked in carrying the laundry basket, unaware of their words. The lawyer's voice echoed from the living room. "I'm here about Mr. Bello's estate," he said politely. Mrs. Bello smiled. "Yes, please, come in." She shot Amara a deadly look. "Stay out of grown-up business." The lawyer began reading the will. According to the late Mr. Bello, his farmland in Enugu is to be inherited by his daughter, Amara Bello. Silence filled the room. Tenny gasped. Mrs. Bello's smile vanished. "That must be a mistake," she said quickly. "My husband would never. It's written in his own handwriting," the lawyer interrupted. Amara's hands trembled as she held the paper the lawyer handed her. He left this for me," she whispered. Mrs. Bello snatched the document away. "You think you deserve anything? You, who came from your mother's village with nothing." Her voice dripped with venom. "That property belongs to this family. You're not family." Amara felt her throat tighten. "But he was my father, too." Mrs. Bello's hand came down hard across her face. "Don't you ever raise your voice in my house again." The lawyer stood awkwardly. "Madam, please, you stay out of this," Mrs. Bello snapped. "She'll sign that land over to me, or she'll regret it." Amara's cheek stung as she stood in the corner, eyes wide and full of tears. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably and said, "Miss Amara, your father made this will legal. No one can force you to change it." Mrs. Bello gave a cold laugh. "Legal? In this house I decide what's legal. She'll sign, or she can find somewhere else to sleep." Amara clutched the folded paper and whispered, "Papa wanted me to have it." Mrs. Bello's eyes narrowed. "Your papa isn't here anymore, and I won't have his pity child ruining what's mine." She turned to Tenny. "Take her things. If she doesn't sign by tomorrow, She can go back to that village she came from. That night, Amara sat on the small bed in the corner of the kitchen, staring at the will. Her father's signature looked so strong, so real. She remembered the last time he held her hand before falling sick. Always remember, my daughter, a kind heart is never weakness. She pressed the paper to her chest and whispered, I'll keep your promise, Papa. When dawn broke, Mrs. Bellow's voice filled the air again. So, have you decided? Amara stood up slowly.
No, Ma.
I won't sign it. Mrs. Bellow's face twisted in fury. Then get out, she shouted. Don't come back here again. Tenny smirked from the doorway, holding Amara's small bag. Good riddance, she said coldly. Amara walked out barefoot, holding her father's will in her trembling hand. The road was long, but her steps were steady. Mama Udo saw her and called out, Child, where are you going? Amara forced a smile. Anywhere that's not here. The older woman shook her head. Come, stay in my compound for now. God doesn't forget the innocent. Days turned into weeks, and Amara worked in Mama Udo's small food stall to earn a little money. Her laughter began to return, even if only in small pieces. One evening, as she washed plates, a young man stopped by. Good evening, Ma, he said shyly. I'm Chike, the carpenter from across the market. Amara smiled faintly. Good evening. Chike started coming by often, always with small jokes or help when the stall got busy. You work too hard, he told her one day. Somebody should open a place for you. She laughed softly. I'm just trying to survive. He nodded. Survival today can become success tomorrow, if you don't give up. Months passed, and word spread that Mrs. Bellow and Tenny had tried to sell Amara's inherited farmland. But no buyer wanted it. The land was cursed, they said. Strange things happened there. Crops withered. A buyer's truck even broke down and caught fire. That's your father protecting you, Mama Udo said, crossing herself. Some spirits don't rest when injustice walks free. One afternoon, Amara went to the lawyer's office to seek advice. Sir, she said nervously, can I still claim my father's land? The man smiled warmly. Yes, my dear. The land is yours by law. I can help you secure it properly. Her eyes lit up.
Thank you, sir.
I want to make something out of it. With the lawyer's help, Amara took possession of the land. It was overgrown and wild, but she saw beauty in it. We'll plan again, she told Chike. He grinned. Then let's start. Together, they cleared the ground under the burning sun, side by side, sweat mixing with laughter. For the first time in years, Amara felt peace blooming where pain once lived. Weeks turned into months, and Amara's determination began to show. The once barren farmland slowly came alive. She planted maize, cassava, and vegetables. Chike built a small wooden shed beside the field, calling it Hope's Ground. Because this place will feed more than just stomachs, he said proudly. Amara laughed softly. Then let's make it grow. Villagers began to notice how green her crops were, how her farm thrived even during dry spells. People whispered about the girl who turned her father's land into gold. Amara stayed humble, always saying, it's God's grace and hard work. She hired widows, young boys, and girls who needed jobs. Her farm became a home for many hearts. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bellow's world started crumbling. The expensive clothes she bought on credit were repossessed. The shop she opened for Tenny failed miserably after they quarreled with customers. You call this nonsense business? Mrs. Bellow shouted one afternoon, slapping Tenny across the face. You're just like your useless father's other child. Tenny stormed out, tears in her eyes. In desperation, Mrs. Bellow decided to visit Amara's farm. She arrived in an old taxi, stepping out with fake smiles. My daughter, she said sweetly, you've done well for yourself. I always knew you'd make your father proud. Amara froze, rake in hand. Ma, what are you doing here? I came to see my child, Mrs. Bellow replied. Chike walked over, wiping sweat from his brow. Good afternoon, Ma. Mrs. Bellow's smile faded when she saw him standing close to Amara. Who's this one? She asked sharply. My friend, Amara replied calmly. We built this farm together. Mrs. Bellow's face twisted. So you brought a man here? After everything I did for you? Amara's voice stayed steady. You did nothing for me, Ma. But you taught me something important. How not to treat people. The words cut deep. Mrs. Bellow's hands trembled. You're ungrateful, she hissed. You think you're better than me because of a few crops? Amara looked at her gently.
No, Ma.
I just learned that love doesn't grow where hate is planted. Mrs. Bellows stood in silence, her pride collapsing around her. She left without another word. Tenny returned weeks later, broke and bitter. Mother, Amara is doing better than us, she cried. Her farm is everywhere online. People are writing about her. Mrs. Bellows slapped the table. Enough. I won't have her mocking us. But deep down, she knew it wasn't mockery, it was karma catching up. A year later, Hope's ground had expanded into 3 farmlands and a small processing factory. Amara hired engineers, accountants, and women from nearby villages. She built hostels for her workers and started a scholarship fund for children. No one will feel forgotten the way I did, she said to Chike. He smiled. That's why you'll never lose. During a community event, Amara was invited to speak. The crowd clapped as she took the stage in a simple dress and head wrap. I once thought love meant silence, she said into the microphone. But I learned that peace is found when you stop begging people to see your worth and start building it yourself. The crowd roared with applause. After the event, a reporter approached her. Madam Amara, what's next for you? She smiled warmly. Expansion. I want to teach more women how to grow food and independence. Chike laughed beside her. That means less sleep for both of us. She nudged him playfully. You started this with me, so no complaints. Months later, Mrs. Bellow fell ill. Pride kept her from asking for help, but hunger drove Tenny to Amara's gate. Please, Tenny whispered. Mother is sick. We have nothing. Amara hesitated, then called to her manager. Prepare a vehicle, she said softly. We're going. Chike looked at her with concern. You're sure?
Yes.
Kindness isn't weakness, she replied. When they arrived, Mrs. Bellow was lying on a thin mattress, her once proud eyes dull. She turned her face away when she saw Amara. Why are you here? To laugh at me? Amara knelt beside her.
No, Ma.
I came to help. Tears welled in Mrs. Bellow's eyes. After everything I did? Because of everything you did, Amara whispered. Amara paid for her treatment and moved her to a small house near the farm. For weeks, Mrs. Bellows stayed silent, watching the workers, the laughter, the peace. One evening she called Amara. You should hate me, she said quietly. Amara smiled. I don't have space for hate anymore. I filled it with purpose. Mrs. Bellow wept openly. Your father would be proud, she murmured. I see him in you. Amara took her hand gently. Then maybe now you can rest. For the first time in years, the woman's face softened. Thank you, she whispered. Days later, she passed peacefully in her sleep. Tenny stayed for a while, helping around the farm. She struggled at first but found comfort in work. One afternoon she said, I never understood you, Amara. I used to think kindness made you weak. Amara smiled. Now you know it's the strongest thing we can be. The sisters hugged, a quiet moment of healing. Years passed. Hope's Ground became one of the biggest agricultural cooperatives in the state. Amara and Chike married in a simple ceremony under a mango tree, surrounded by workers and friends. We started with nothing but pain, Chike whispered, and look where we are. Amara smiled. Pain was the seed. Love was the rain. Their stories spread across the country. Universities invited Amara to speak about rural empowerment and forgiveness. She never mentioned revenge or anger, only faith and resilience. I didn't build this farm to prove anyone wrong, she said at one event. I built it to remind myself I could still grow after being buried. In her quiet office overlooking the green fields, Amara kept one framed letter on her wall, her father's will. Below it, she'd written in neat handwriting, He gave me land. Life taught me how to use it. Each morning she touched it and whispered, Thank you, Papa. One afternoon, Children from nearby schools came for a tour. A little girl tugged Amara's dress and asked, "Auntie, how did you make everything so big?" Amara knelt and smiled. "Because once, everyone said I couldn't. And when people say that, you must prove them wrong, not with words but with work." As the sun dipped behind the hills, Amara stood on the farmland she once walked away from barefoot. Laughter echoed around her, the sound of people she'd turned into family. Chike came and wrapped his arm around her. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled, eyes glistening. "No, we did it. This is what love looks like when hate fails." And please don't forget to tap the bell so every new folktale reaches you first. Tell us in the comments what you think about the story. And tell us where you're watching from. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this beautiful story with friends, family, and loved ones so they too can remember.